Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years. And I'm here to help you become a more successful and consistent hunter, shed hunter, and outdoorsman. In this episode, we're breaking down how mule deer and elk actually travel right before they drop their antlers, because this is one of the most misunderstood and most important pieces of successful shed hunting. Most shed hunting advice focuses on where to walk, south slopes, the easy stuff, right? Winter range, migration corridors, and all of that has value, but it completely skips over a critical truth. Antlers don't fall randomly, and animals don't move randomly right before they drop. Antler drop is preceded by a very specific shift in behavior. Movement tightens, travel routes shrink, daily patterns simplify, and energy conservation becomes the dominant driver of every decision an animal makes. If you don't understand that shift, you end up hunting where animals used to be instead of where they actually are when antlers hit the ground. You walk good country at the wrong time. You follow winter movement instead of pre-drop movement, and you miss sheds that are stacked in places most people never slow down enough to notice. This episode is about correcting that mistake. We're going to break down why deer and elk move less, not more, before they drop their antlers, why their travel routes contract instead of expand, how energy conservation reshapes path selection, and why the final week or two before antler loss matters more than everything that happened all winter long. When you understand pre-drop behavior, shed locations stop feeling so random and they start to make more sense. You stop chasing animals across landscape and start hunting the final decisions they make before their antlers actually hit the ground. Let's try to break it down. One of the biggest misconceptions in shed hunting is the idea that animals move more as antlers loosen. In reality, the opposite is true. As deer and elk approach their antler drop, their movement tightens dramatically. This isn't accidental, and it isn't subtle if you know what to look for. By late winter and early spring, animals are operating in an energy deficit. Fat reserves are low, nutritional intake is limited, thermoregulation still costs calories. Every unnecessary step becomes a liability. Antler drop doesn't cause this behavior. The same physiological stress that causes antler drop also drives movement reduction. When testosterone levels drop and the pedicules weaken, animals are already in a conservation mode. Their priority is survival, not exploration. That means fewer miles, fewer elevation changes, and fewer reasons to move. This is why you don't often see animals bedding and feeding in very tight proximity right before antler loss. They aren't roaming. They aren't migrating aggressively. They're managing what little energy they have left. From a shed hunting perspective, this is critical. If you're hunting wide, assuming animals are covering ground, you're hunting yesterday's behavior. Pre-drop animals live small. They operate in compact zones that meet all their needs. This is also why some areas suddenly turn on with sheds. It's not because animals arrived recently, it's because they stopped leaving. Understanding that tightening movement is a deliberate survival strategy that changes how you search. You stop expecting sheds to be scattered evenly across terrain and start looking for clusters tied to repeated use. Antlers fall where animals spend time, not where they travel occasionally. Most of the time. Obviously, you're going to get drops while they're traveling in some places. As movement tightens, travel routes shrink. This is another point where shed hunters often get it backwards. Many people assume animals create more trails, explore more options, or move unpredictably late in winter. What actually happens is route selection becomes hyper efficient. Mule deer and elk abandon secondary paths. They stop experimenting. They default to the easiest and safest and lowest resistance routes available. Those routes are usually side hills with minimal elevation change, benches that allow feeding and travel simultaneously, gentle drainages with protection from wind, short connectors between bedding and feed. What disappears are the long detours, the steep climbs, and exploratory loops that animals used earlier in winter. This route contraction concentrates antler drop. Instead of sheds being spread across dozens of trails, they begin appearing along a small small number of repeatable lines. That's why experienced shed hunters often say things like, once you find the trail, you'll find multiple sheds. That isn't luck, it's behavior. Animals about to drop antlers reduce options. They move along what works and nothing else. This is also why pressure late in the season has such an outsized impact. When route options are limited, disturbance forces animals to either burn extra energy or abandon optimal zones, both of which delay antler drop or shift where it happens. Hunters who understand route contraction don't walk everything. They identify the best path and hunt it carefully from multiple angles with patience. Shrinking routes mean shrinking search areas. If you know how to recognize those,
step into the backcountry and step up your elk hunting game at Elk Camp 2026. This isn't a seminar, it's an immersive experience with real field training alongside successful elk hunters Matt and Saxton Hartsky. You'll learn how elk think and move, break down terrain like a pro, call with confidence, and practice 3 days of real-world elk hunting scenarios that mirror what you'll face on your own hunt. This camp was built to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be in the mountains. With limited spots and hands-on coaching, you'll walk away sharper, more prepared, and ready to hunt with purpose and confidence. Elk Camp 2026. Sharpen your edge. Register now and prepare for the season like never before at backboneunlimited.com.
energy conservation isn't just about distance either. It's about resistance. Animals don't think in miles, right? They think in effort. As antler drop approaches, deer and elk choose paths that minimize elevation gain, snow depth, exposure to wind, vegetation resistance, risk of disturbance. This often results in travel that looks counterintuitive on a map. Instead of moving straight toward food, animals contour. Instead of climbing directly, they side hill. Instead of crossing open areas, they skirt edges. This is why sheds often show up in places that don't look like perfect destinations. They're not destinations. They're low resistance connectors. Many shed hunters miss these because they focus on where animals want to be, not how they get there with minimal cost. Pre-drop animals choose paths that allow them to feed, move, and bed with the least total energy expenditure across the day. That means repeated use of the same line, even if it's slightly longer in distance. A mile of side hill travel may cost less energy than a quarter-mile climb. When antlers are ready to drop, animals aren't willing to gamble with their energy. They choose certainty, the predictability, the efficiency. That's why understanding resistance matters more than understanding just straight distance. This is one of the most important concepts in serious shed hunting. Where animals spent the last week before antler drop matters more than where they spent the entire winter. Who cares about that? We care about the shed drop. Sheds fall based on recent use, not seasonal averages. Animals may winter in large areas. They may migrate through multiple zones, but antlers fall where animals were living when the pedicules failed. This is why hunters who rely on winter observations often come up empty. They're hunting history, not the reality of the shed drop. The final week or two before antler loss is when movement tightens, routes contract, and bedding and feeding proximity becomes critical. That's when animals settle into their final pre-drop patterns. If you're shed hunting based on December or January movement, that's too early on in the season. Successful shed hunters constantly ask, where are animals spending time right now? Late March and April. They track snowline movement, green up progression, pressure changes, and subtle shifts in bedding behavior. This is why timing feels so elusive to a lot of shed hunters. They're using outdated information. Last week movement is dynamic. It changes quickly, but it leaves concentrated sign and antlers. When movement tightens and routes shrink, animals begin living small. They feed in the same pockets, bed in the same cover, use the same connectors repeatedly. This creates what experienced shed hunters recognize as reload zones, areas that produce sheds year after year because animals consistently tighten movement there before antler drop. Those zones aren't always obvious either. They aren't always large, and they are rarely spread evenly across a unit. They exist where feed and bedding overlap closely, where travel resistance is low, where pressure is manageable, and where terrain allows efficiency. Once animals set into those zones, antler drop becomes almost inevitable there, not because of luck, but because time spent equals probability. Shed hunters who understand this don't rush through those areas. They slow down, they grid them, they recheck them. They know that if animals live there during the pre-drop window, antlers are likely present even if they haven't been seen yet. When you put all this together, shed hunting becomes more predictive instead of reactive. You stop chasing signs so much, you stop hiking blindly, and you start asking better questions. Where would an animal minimize effort right now? Which routes would it abandon? Where would it live small? Where would it repeat movement daily? Pre-drop behavior answers those questions. Shed hunting success comes from aligning your search with how animals actually live when antlers are about to fall, not how they lived earlier in the winter. Once you understand that, shed hunting stops feeling random and it becomes systematic. Mule deer and elk don't wander before they drop antlers. They tighten their movement, they shrink their routes, they conserve energy, and they live smaller. Antlers fall where animals spend time, the living room, not where they travel occasionally. If you're hunting winter movement instead of pre-drop behavior, you're always going to be one step behind. When you focus on the final week, the final routes, and the final decisions animals make, sheds stop hiding. If you're serious about taking this kind of knowledge deeper, that's exactly why I built Team Backbone. It's more than just a membership. It's a way to sharpen your edge with exclusive tools, strategies, and a tribe of relentless hunters. Inside, you're going to get 20% off site-wide on all Backbone Unlimited gear, the option to have a t-shirt shipped to your door every month, full access to the digital content vault of guides, checklists, and backcountry strategies, a private Facebook group with direct access to me, and a community of driven hunters, direct call, text, or email access to me for personalized advice on training, hunting strategy, or just sharpening your edge, and automatic entry into monthly gear giveaways. This is built for the guys who train for the hunt, push themselves in the off-season, and want to be part of a tribe that makes them better. If you're ready for that kind of inner circle, then Team Backbone is waiting for you at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Thanks for being here. I appreciate each of you. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.